The Devil's Eye system is one of the most popular and frequently dived caves in the world, but only certified cavern or cave divers with dive lights are permitted to enter. If you are not careful enough, this cave can be very life-threatening. That's what happened with Carlos Fonseca. He was a good diver, but because of his own negligence, he got into big trouble. The Devil's Eye is a cave located approximately 10 minutes west of High Springs, Gilchrist County, Florida. The cave is part of the Ginnie Springs Resort Complex, and it has two entrances, Devil's Eye and Devil's Ear. They quickly join each other underwater in the gallery, which is a wide tube. In general, Devil's Eye provides faster and easier access to the cave system. The Devil's Eye is a round opening, 20 feet across and equally deep. It has over 30,000 feet of mapped passageways. Divers can spend a lifetime of cave diving, and yet there is a big part of it that is yet to be explored. But it is as amazing as it is scary, because it is also called a killer cave, because it has claimed 28 lives. That's why only certified divers may enter the cavern and explore as far as they are able to see, using the present sunlight. Carlos Fonseca, a resident of Caledon, Ontario, made diving a way of life. His dedication brought him many wonderful experiences, as well as wonderful friendships. His passion for exploration and the search for the unknown led him to Great Lakes Technical Divers, or GLTD, allowing him to pursue his dream. Carlos was an active TRIMIX diver, full cave diver, and SIDEMOUNT full cave diver. His most famous accomplishments include receiving the National Association of Cave Diving Wakala Award and establishing Great Lakes Technical Divers as a co-producer of the We Are Water project. On Thursday, August 8, 2013, Carlos was about to go for a dive within the Devil's Eye cave with a couple of his teammates. He and his teammates drove for an hour from their county and reached at their destination. His teammates were a couple of his friends that he used to dive with almost all his life. His friends used to brag about this guy because Carlos was living the best days of his life. He was healthy, rich, and had all the time in the world. Carlos was preparing an aluminum 80 cubic foot tank labeled O2 and Mod 20, which means maximum operating depth 20 feet, as a stage bottle to 90 feet to extend his penetration distance into the cave. He and his teammates decided to go in the cave turn by turn. Carlos was an expert at diving, so obviously he was going to lead his teammates whenever he and his mates were on vacation and decided to go for a swim. Carlos was always the one to lead. When they were getting ready, his teammates noticed that he was about to use an oxygen bottle at a depth greater than what was safe, and they questioned him about it. As indicated, the oxygen bottle was designed to be used down to a maximum operating depth of 20 feet. Carlos, who had a full mix and blend station at home, responded that he had filled the bottles himself and was aware that were full of air, but little did he know. Carlos's colleagues expressed concern about the tank, which they suspected, and he insisted that he knew it was air. Carlos's computer was also set to broadcast mode. Nobody had seen Carlos examine the tank that morning. The team continued to prepare for the dive by discussing the dive plan, reviewing the map, and making emergency and contingency plans to turn the dive if necessary. Carlos proposed that no visual jumps would be made during the dive, which refers to crossing a gap without a gap spool between the main permanent guideline and where a branch line begins. The team entered the Devil Springs cave system via the Santa Fe River's Eye. The initial 20 minutes were a smooth dive with no apparent mishaps or anything. Carlos was leading the way and his teammates were just behind him. They stopped for taking pictures for a couple of minutes and kept on diving in further. As they were diving, the oxygen levels dropped, and at that time, they should have checked their oxygen tank levels, but they didn't. They had gone about 400 feet upstream and were about a third of the way between the park bench and Hill 400 when Carlos began to have seizures and then lost consciousness, At a depth of about 85 feet, the partial pressure of oxygen was about 3.6, resulting in oxygen toxicity. For those of you who have no idea what oxygen toxicity is, let me explain. Oxygen toxicity, also known as oxygen poisoning, is lung damage caused by inhaling too much extra supplemental oxygen. Too much oxygen can be harmful to lung tissues. It can cause the lungs to collapse. The lungs are then unable to take in normal amounts of air. It's also known as oxygen poisoning. It can cause coughing and breathing difficulties. It can even be fatal in severe cases. That's exactly what had happened to Carlos. Before the possible cardiac arrest, Carlos began breathing at 2 points on the way out of the cave and at the surface. As the group surfaced and yelled for assistance, other divers, including cave instructors, assisted in bringing Carlos to shore and began CPR. Carlos was taken to the hospital alive, but later pronounced dead. Journalist and fellow diver Robert Osborne wrote about his friend's death in the Huffington Post. Before the news of Fonseca's death was made public, dive forums picked up rumors and spread a story about him dying while exploring the Devil's Spring. Now, if someone dies doing something, people start speculating the person's expertise in that task. So did the people. Their immediate response was that Carlos was not a good diver, but he actually was a very good diver. A cave instructor who participated in the rescue attempt later analyzed the tanks in the presence of sheriff's deputies. The oxygen content of the single-stage bottle was determined to be 98%. At the time of the seizure, at a depth of about 85 feet, the partial pressure of oxygen was about 3.5, resulting in oxygen toxicity. The oxygen content of the back-mounted double steel tanks was determined to be 30%. After his death, questions were coming up from all around because Carlos was quite an expert, so nobody could have ever expected him to be gone. And the reason being diving, which he was considered an expert at. His friends and relatives were all there trying to process what had happened. His friends were shocked because how can someone make a mistake at something he has been doing for years? Now let's take a look back and figure out how things went wrong. As far as health is concerned, Carlos was a healthy person without any issues whatsoever. The officer, Detective Ken Phillips, who handled the case of Carlos, said that there was nothing wrong with Carlos health-wise, but several other factors led to his demise. First of all, the oxygen tank had no sufficient oxygen. His teammates only indicated that the tank was not fully filled. They should have insisted and checked if the tank had enough oxygen or not. Nobody at Carlos's home had any idea of him even checking the tanks, let alone leaving for a dive that would probably end his life. Nobody would have died that day if they just took care of the essentials, but they didn't. One thing you need the most underwater is oxygen, and Carlos was negligent with that, and he paid the price. Secondly, although the planning of this dive was right, Carlos was overconfident that day. Carlos and his teammates were planning this dive for years, and they came well prepared. Then what happened? As the old saying goes, the bottom of the lighted lamp is the brightest. That day just wasn't their day. And Carlos was pretty confident, or we can say overconfident that day. Now cave diving is a sport unlike any other. According to some experts, it is regarded as an extremely dangerous activity due to the sheer number of risks involved. Several things can go wrong when exploring a dark cave underwater, such as equipment failure, losing your way, or having to deal with near-zero visibility while making your way to the exit. One thing is certain, cave diving is not a sport for the faint of heart. Another thing that Carlos did was hold his breath more than necessary. This is undoubtedly the most important of all diving safety rules, as failure to follow it could result in death. The fluctuating air pressure in your lungs can rupture the lung walls if you hold your breath underwater at the depths that scuba divers reach. This is known as pulmonary barotrauma. In severe cases, air bubbles can escape into the chest cavity and bloodstream. Air bubbles in the bloodstream can cause arterial gas embolism, which can be fatal in many cases. Breathing slowly and gently is not a problem. Just keep a regular and consistent rhythm. Every dive site is unique, and conditions such as weather and current can vary significantly. So even the most experienced divers must conduct extensive research before even considering entering the water and diving to the depths we're discussing. Because of the possible variations in so many parameters, this is one of the top tips for safe diving. So always make sure to find out about current conditions on the morning of the day you plan to dive. Always check that you are well acquainted with your emergency release belt and have the necessary weights. Check that your air tank is completely full. And take a few breaths through your regulator to ensure it is working properly. Check that all of your gear is properly tightened and strapped. And always double-check every aspect of your kit. It is not an exaggeration to say that the thoroughness of this examination could save your life. So always be thorough. All of these factors are critical for ensuring your safety while enjoying the often mind-boggling experience of cave diving. But perhaps the most important rule that has yet to be mentioned is to never, ever dive without first being properly trained for the conditions and depth of the location. We want to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like button. Consider subscribing to our channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting cave diving story.